Hi everybody, this is Alchemist 2 and I'm back again with another book review. I just finished Neil Gaiman's American Gods. I definitely had to pick the book up because, of course, as you all know, if you've watched my reviews, I was completely obsessed, still completely obsessed with the TV series. And Rock City is a real place I would like to visit. I don't know exactly where it is, but you've got the house on the rock, and apparently it's a tourist destination. And I mean, I knew that before I read the book, but I had kind of forgotten over time just because it wasn't anything that I really thought about on a daily basis. But now I'm going to have to make a pilgrimage to the house on the rock and Rock City. But the book itself is extremely interesting. We have all these different gods and goddesses and folk heroes, like you've got Whiskey Jack and Harry Blue Jay and see, they had Johnny Appleseed, and of course Whiskey Jack and Johnny Appleseed were talking about Paul Bunyan, and Shadow was very curious, and they told him that he's just a story, he didn't really exist, he was just made up. And I thought, well, how disappointing. I really like Paul Bunyan, and Babe, yeah, Babe's nothing more than tall tales. I thought, darn it. But of course, Whiskey Jack is a very intriguing character. Harry Blue Jay, we don't really see too terribly much of Harry Blue Jay. We've got Bast. I now know who that Egyptian Rex is. I thought, that's Bast. I thought, how could I miss that? How could I miss that? Bast, duh, is the cat-headed god. Of course they would make her an Egyptian Rex and put her in the form of a feline. Makes absolute sense. I never thought of that. I thought, oh, that's why reading this book has given me more context upon which to base the show, and it's more coherent. There were a lot of things that I missed watching it the first time around, and it's just absolutely sensational. And the ending is kind of a Lady or Tiger, which I really enjoyed. And I thought, oh, so it's sort of like make your own ending for Shadow. And it's interesting what is revealed about Shadow himself and why his name is a dichotomy and an irony in of itself. Very, very, very intriguing, just exquisite allegory that Mr. Gaiman does, and his writing is just bar none. Just reading his prose is just something incredible, I think. I really wish that I had his gift. I mean, I can write, but I can't write the way that he does. I don't know what it is about Mr. Gaiman. But Mr. Gaiman has a very eloquent and elegant turn of phrase in the way that he writes a description, or gets you hooked into a storyline, especially with Shadow and Laura and Mad Sweeney and Mr. Wednesday and Mr. World and Mr. Town and all these other very eclectic and interesting, mysterious characters that you can't help but absolutely love. I think the spider was a Nazi. And of course I learned that the narrator, that's Ibis and Jackal. And of course, I'm sorry, I was just calling them the names that I had given them, and these are gods. And it was just, I absolutely loved it, and I adore the fact that he adds an index to it and a epilogue, which I said it was the, was the Lady or Tiger ending. And I love this part, this interview here. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Which godlike powers would you like to possess? I want to make time stretchier. I would like much more rubbery days. I would just wish that you could lean on a week, it sort of push the walls out a bit, and suddenly about 19 extra days would rush in and fill in the vacuum. There's not enough time. I wind up wanting to do things that I don't have time for. There are so many things that I love to do, and I have to put off, or that there's a matter of me choosing when I'd really love to do both. And if only there were if time were only infinitely stretchy, I could. What's your favorite roadside attraction? The house on the rock in American Gods is actually real. I just mentioned that. Most people think I made it up, whereas the actual fact, I just toned it down a bit so people would believe it. Because being a real place has no obligation to be likely. So I left out the 120-piece robot orchestra and other stuff. Well, yeah, of course, it's a tourist attraction. They got to draw in the business as like any other tourist trap. I remember the first time I went to the House on the Rock thinking, I just don't believe this place. The second time I went to the House on the Rock, still not believing this place. Then I had to go back for Entertainment Weekly to take my photograph standing beside the largest carousel in the world. Oh, that's cool. It was the single loudest photo session I've ever had because they actually pitched the volume of the mechanical instruments in that room in order to keep people moving through. You're not meant to linger too long by the largest carousel in the world. The photo session went on for several hours, and the photographer was communicating with me entirely by hand gestures. He would tap his chin and then point up so I would know to look up a bit. How did you find out about it? Like most roadside attractions in America, they have signposts saying about 300 miles away. I've actually seen bird houses that say, visit Rock City. Rock City, which is also an American Gods, is worse because I saw my first signpost, see Rock City, World's Wonder, driving through the mountainous Tennessee or Kentucky. That's, yeah, absolutely true. Again, it's assumed that it's just around the corner and just drove for the greater part of the day. And then, of course, because it's almost impossible to get to once you're there, I drove straight past it. Then I drove back and checked out and decided it was going to be in my book. And then he talks about his strangest plane journey, his favorite coin trick, his favorite con artist trick. And if I can turn the page. Sorry, I had to. Did you enjoy making up con tricks? Are there any myths you would like to dispel? And I think this is interesting. I have my journal over at www.neilgaiman.com. And one of the reasons for having it, other part is incredibly useful to have an immediate plug into your readers, is that I want to turn up at signings and people would expect me to be characters that I had created, particularly the Sandman. Yeah, I can relate. So I turned up the signing to see the disappointment on people's faces because I wasn't tall and pale and beautiful or morbid. They expected me to speak in gnomic Gothic sentences and possibly iambic pentameter or triolets or something. I like the blog because it undercuts and dispels that. I don't think you can imagine somebody as a beautiful Gothic figure if they've just written about clearing up cat vomit on the floor at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now been a few years since American Gods came out. Do you have any thoughts on the novel? People were incredibly nice about American Gods. I had never expected all the awards it won, particularly when it won the Hugo and the Nebula and the Bram Stoker Award. That was delightful. All of those are very prestigious awards, by the way. And Americans were terribly nice about it. No one actually did the whole, how dare you being English write about America? I thought that was kind of them. The thing I found really amusing was about some places in the middle where they were talking the way they talk in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Occasionally, I would have New Yorkers and Los Angelinos accusing me of lapsing into Briticisms there. Mostly, I think because people have no idea what people talk like in the rest of the country. That's true. And of course, yeah, there was a question at the very end, how dare you? That was funny. I love the expanded text or the author's preferred text. I think it's the better and more pristine, and just it's more intimate because you feel like you're having to sit down with Neil Gaiman over some Earl Grey. Oh man, that would be just delightful, I think. I would love that. Of course, I would probably be geeking out the whole time, but it's just a sensational book. If you're a fan of American Gods, read the book because it actually helps you make more sense out of the show and maybe get more detail on what you missed when you watched the show. So it's like having a concourse when you're reading the Bible. It's you pick up little hints and turns of phrases or little elements here and there maybe you probably glossed over having watched the episode. So it's very, very, very practical to have, and it's absolutely outstanding. And by no means should any Neil Gaiman fan or American Gods fan be without it, because it's just that good. So I shall see you next time. Live long, prosper. Ciao, tutti.